Welcome to the Sunflower Rising podcast, where we explore what happens when our raw, messy humanness collides with the boundless grace of Jesus Christ. For too long, the 12 steps have been seen as something reserved only for drugs or alcohol. But here, we're breaking that stigma wide open. These steps are a pathway to surrender, healing, and freedom for everything life throws at us with Jesus right at the center. It's about progress, not perfection. I'm Nikki.
And I'm Rae Anne.
And we're thrilled that you're here. Pull up a chair, let's rise together, and remember to always face the sun. Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 2 of the Sunflower Rising podcast. How are you, Rae Anne?
I'm great, how are you?
I'm good. I am excited to be here. We're the unlikely duo that Jesus has put together, doing it again for episode 2.
Right.
I'm still the recovering perfectionist over here.
Yeah, and I'm still in recovery, working 12 steps over my life and applying Jesus to any and everything that life throws at me.
Yeah.
Which can bring us right into, here we are now, getting to sit down with each other. It's actually been a little bit since we've sat down and recorded with each other, because we joked the other day when we met and sat down as life just started lifing like all over the place.
It really
and we were
did.
scrambling, trying to keep up to stay focused on what we were wanting to do.
Yes, it was hard, but I feel like we're kind of got a cadence now, just to let people know that we're going to record more regularly. We're going to have a podcast launch goal every week at Monday at 6 p.m.
Yes.
So everybody be watching for that. But Our last episode, we really just kind of jumped into the conversation about how we met and why we're doing this. And so today we're going to kind of extend that conversation a little bit and then give you guys kind of a preview of where we're going. But, there's a lot of podcasts out there.
Right.
And so I think one of the first questions I want to answer for our friends that are listening is, why are we doing a podcast when there's so many of them out there? Like, why are we doing a podcast, Rand?
Yeah. It's funny that you say that, because that's something I asked too. I'm like, everybody and their brother's doing a podcast. But I think that's the beautiful part of, that is the times. That is what everybody's doing. And you can sit down, and it makes it easier to connect with people and to be able to use your voice, or God to use you to deliver a message or a story. I love sharing things from I statements, because I don't think nothing reaches anybody more than things they feel that they can relate with. And I think that God has brought both of us together, because it's funny, we share and talk about our stories, even though the details are vastly different, they still align so much. So to bring, like you said, the unlikely duo together, he had a great plan in mind, because you do your Christian coaching, and I just want to talk about the 12 steps in the way of being able to use them to apply Jesus Christ over everything in our lives that we all struggle with. And then there's the easiest way to do it now with all the social medias and all the platforms, and this is just a blessed way of being able to do that. For myself, when we used to do the same kind of format of what we're using for this podcast, was a ministry. We had to meet in person, circle up, like all these things. I mean, it was beautiful and it was great, but you didn't get to reach as many people or help as many people. And I'm hoping now this will just be like that, but on steroids, to be able to reach everybody that possibly can.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of like God's way of giving us a microphone.
Yeah.
And for me, from my coaching business side, I wanted to do my podcast for a while. Really ever since I launched out into the coaching world, but it just never felt comfortable to me to just sit in front of a camera by myself.
Yeah.
And so Jesus bringing us together this past fall really helped me spur that on and be like, this is what you need. You need somebody that you can be in conversation with. And so that's kind of, for me, why a podcast is get our message out there. But to have you as a conversation to talk to is just amazing. So.
Yeah, it's easier for sounding boards to have each other to bounce things off of, and to have conversations and just dialogue back and forth. But I will tell you, because I was thinking about this since like October of last year, and planning and trying to get things together, and I did get way ahead of myself in planning before we'd kicked anything off or recorded everything, and that's kind of my nature. I love to create things. I love to design things. But there were so many things about the podcast that I did not take into consideration, or I didn't know, because we had said earlier, or the previous episode when we talked, is, my nature is I just jump in and figure it out as I go, and I'm usually okay with that. But I ran into a couple things that I just was way in over my head, which is beautiful, because then that's what God had also, you'd had experience or gifting in that. And we didn't even know we were going to need each other for that.
Yeah.
And even though this is the first time you and I have been able to kind of sit down and record again for a little while, we have been recording. I had the pleasure of sitting down with my daughter, Autumn Milwee, and she is going to be our first guest speaker that will launch out her episode. And then I have a great friend, Josh Laughter, who's written a book. He owns recovery homes. He's a pastor of a church, and him and I have so much history together. We got to sit down and record, and he will be our guest speaker that we launch in April. And we have that in our schedule that we've worked out, even trying to figure out some of our fundamentals of what we want to do and stay on track, and what this is going to look like is the last Monday of every month we will have guest speakers on, and we will have their testimonies. So even that's beautiful, but some of it we just kind of had to jump in for myself, and I've had to learn as I go, and it has been a tad overwhelming. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes, Jesus has been helping us learn new things, and he's also, like you said, you have the dream vision casting. I have more of the details from my previous work life in marketing, and so it has been fun over the last 6 weeks to see how those have worked together, and how we can support each other on kind of the behind the scenes of the podcast production. So and I love that we've already got some guest episodes recorded. Can't wait to get those out there. In between, we'll be focusing on the 12 steps with Jesus. And so you want to give our friends listening just a little bit of a heads up on what that will be?
My husband and I had done ministry for a very long time together. We had met a couple, and they had this vision and this dream, and God brought us along and put us on that path and that journey to be able to partner with them and do this. But in that process, my husband and I realized, and we knew that this is why God birthed us. Do you need to check?
I heard a click. Did you hear a click?
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm going to check. We'll have to jump back in there, but.
That's okay.
No, we're still going. Sorry, but I definitely heard that click.
Oh, I know.
No,
that's all right.
Okay, so.
But in that whole entire process, that's how we learned that this is what God birthed us for, is recovery, restoration, the 12 steps, mentoring, sponsoring people, which we will actually refer to more as discipleship, because when you just sit down and talk about God with people, we're really just discipling each other in Christ. But that's where all of this has come from, is just the last 16 years. My husband would lead the group, and he would write lessons. And I've taken his lessons that he's written over the steps and spiritual principles. So there's the 12 steps with Jesus has a 24-part component. You've got 12 steps, and then you have 12 spiritual principles. And you align both of those together on how to, use those or live in them, or to help you to heal or to overcome things. And I took his lessons, or a bunch of his lessons, and I formatted them into like a devotional style. And then from that, I've taken worksheets and activities and things that I've done with sponsees that I've worked with over the last 16 years or so. And I combined everything into our workbook. And then that's what you and I will be diving into, is to talk about that material, review that material, go over that stuff with people. And then it matches so beautifully with your Christian coaching. So you'll also have and bring the Christian coaching component of that for people to be able to marry both of those and tie all that stuff in as well.
Yes, I'm excited to start that discussion, because as I read through the different steps, I already have some coaching type questions to talk about, so that'll be fun. I do want to give another heads up. I did record an episode about my coaching and how that goes, so we'll get that out there. It'll kind of probably be a mini episode released somewhere between episodes this month, but just for our friends listening, that'll be coming out, so you can understand more about what coaching is and my approach to it and how I work. So that'll be coming out too.
Well, and with doing all this stuff, we've also kind of honed in and made more of a streamline of all stuff. We just created our first official website, which is on Facebook. People can find it, YouTube. There's so many areas for everybody to find what we're doing or what we're looking for. And, on the socials, we'll do little videos, little shorts, little funny. I even had started composing some bloopers, which, as you get to know me more, I've a very quirky sense of humor, so the bloopers have probably been my favorite thing out of all of this. Where with part where you're saying we'll sit up and suck it in, and I'm like, and I'll try my best not to cuss. which my daughter Autumn, when she listened to our first episode, just to give some feedback of, as a listener, she's like, Mom, did you realize that you cussed? And I was like, did I? I didn't even realize I did it. I'm like, well, I tried so hard not to. Maybe one had to come out, or I was going to spontaneously combust. Like, there are still some things that Jesus is really working with me over, you know? But so even doing the bloopers is going to be fun to get all that stuff out there.
Yeah, I'm excited. I love a good blooper reel.
Yeah.
And we'll see how much I love it when I'm in it, but I'm here for it.
It is different when you're the blooper.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to bring some humor and some fun behind the scenes. And hey, we're keeping it real. So if a word that offends somebody comes out, well, we'll just ask for forgiveness and ahead of time and pray that Jesus' message comes through, even if there's words that people might catch their ear, but maybe a little bit.
Well, you definitely are going to have to be able to hang with people that are rough around the edges for myself, because I am still absolutely a work in progress.
We all are. And I think, I'll just say, if you get to a point where you think you've got it all figured out, that's a scary place to be.
Right.
So it's, life is continually letting Jesus prune us, letting Jesus trim around the edges,
right?
Letting Jesus show us what is good in us and what it needs to be changed in us to be closer to him.
I've always kept track of when I was sponsoring ladies, because when you do the 12 steps, it's men with men, women with women, because there could just be too much emotional overlapping, which can get a little confusing for people sometimes. So we always wanted to keep it, same gender focused. And I would keep track of people that I'm sponsoring with like a folder and their work in there and notes and all this stuff. And I had, last I had checked or looked, there was 85 people that I have sponsored or worked with. And a thing that I would always have to tell them to break their heart is, hey, when we get to the end, we're not finished. It's actually right when it's starting. We've laid the foundation here. Yeah. We've just got a solid, foundation, solid footwork. We've got into the weeds and the muck of stuff. Yeah. And once we get to the end of the 12 steps where we have sat down and worked together, well, now this is really when it's going to start. It's when the hard work really starts. And some people would hit eject. They're like, oh, no, thanks. I'm not interested in that. Yeah. And other people, of course, were willing. And I still have ladies in my life today that will call me or message me or talk to me, because it's really just about being the body of Christ. Like this, as you can see, everything that's going on today, this world is so overwhelming. Yeah. It can be absolutely crushing. And if you've got so much stuff still stored up inside from childhood, from trauma, it's almost impossible to keep facing so many things that are still so overwhelming. Right. We've got to clean some of that stuff out to be able to face new stuff. Yes. Because if not, it can crush you. And trying to do all that stuff alone it's impossible. Right. It's absolutely impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, that aligns with coaching, because I always talk about the gap. Yeah. We all have a gap of what we want and where we are. Right. No matter, in different areas of our life. And sometimes the gap may be this big, sometimes it may be this big. But coaching is basically someone to help you fill that gap. Right. Because how many times have we read a book, or we woke up on Monday and be like, this is going to be different. Yeah. And then you get to Friday and you're like, oh. But when you invest time in someone to walk with you, whether it's a coach or a ministry partner, it makes a difference. Yeah. Jesus talks about two working together. And so, and with him in the process, well, then you're really headed right down the road. But I also talk about, the coaching session is important, but what's even more important is what you do between coaching sessions and with what we've talked about and learned. Right. So it's a little bit the same thing with the steps. It's, you can meet with them, you can go through the steps, but what they do to take those into their everyday life is really where the magic and the growth happens, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because for the 12 steps we did for 12 weeks, we would meet once a week for about an hour, but outside of that, they had work they were doing, activities, worksheets, things we would focus on, stuff we would talk about. And then just us coming together for 1 hour was exploring and talking about that stuff. But I've always made the joke that there's so much power when you put pen to paper. Oh, yeah. Like, what is that saying? The pen is mightier than the sword. Yes. That's no joke. That is an absolute, and just to see it happen or in fruition, it's to see how healing that can be. It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing, because it is sitting down and doing all of that work, and it's life-changing. It's absolutely life-changing. And it's hard to get people to understand, and I hate to use the word magic because we're talking about Jesus, but I'm going to use the word magic. I mean, it's a miracle. It's absolute to see it happen, it's unexplainable, but you can't generally get anybody to truly understand it until they experience it.
Right.
And then they experience and like, whoa, you weren't kidding.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, but I've been telling you this all along. But once they go through it, they can feel it.
Yeah.
And even when seeing what God's doing with bringing us together with the 12 steps, we do tend to go back more. We are going to go back and look at, and you're going to hear me say the word roots a lot, because we're going to go and find the roots of things that have been traumatic, overwhelming, like just anything almost in a negative kind of root in your life.
Yeah.
We do look at some good things too, but plucking out the poison and the yuck and the junk, we go back to look at that stuff all the way even to childhood, to elementary school, junior high school, your, dating.
Yeah, so in coaching, we have a more forward-looking approach. I think it's great that there's spaces in recovery and therapy and other places to go back. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Coaching is just not that space.
Right.
It's looking forward. It's looking at what goals that you have, the gap of where you are right now versus where you want to be,
right.
How to bridge that. And so, it's just a little bit more forward-looking.
Because that's beautiful with the phrase that you always say, that I like how you refer to it. It's being in your being, not your doing.
Yeah.
And then that's where God had a great plan of marrying both things together, because we're going to work on the whole complete person and explore all things to be able to help us as a person. Because, we talk about different identities or in your doing. When seasons happen in life, you think, well, my identity is Rae Anne as a friend, or as a wife, or as a podcaster, or whatever your job is, or as a mother, or any of that stuff. But all of that stuff can end, and it does end most of the time. Because even if let's use being a mother for example, you're always a mother, but even how you mother is going to change, how that looks, and even as a father, that's going to change because your children will grow up and they're going to branch out and establish their life. But you've been doing that for such a long time. You have an empty void. You have an empty spot that now you're scrambling with, okay, who am I? Like, what do I do? Because your identity was your children for such a long time.
Right.
But with focusing on doing all this stuff, we want to focus on, who am I in Christ? He birthed me to be a certain way. He has created me to be everything that I'm supposed to be. And that stuff trickles over into all the stuff that he calls you to do, or he wants you to do in your life.
Yes.
So there's a huge difference of your being versus your doing.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in the worldly terms, we make our doings our identity.
Yes, we totally do. And a lot of times on the being side, people will come to me and they want to focus on the doing.
Right.
And we can start there. But I always work to bring them back to the being and spend some time thinking about who you want to be. Because, it's easy to say, well, I know who I am.
Right.
I live with myself every day.
Yeah.
Or I know what my needs and values are. I know what my giftings are. But think, when was the last time you stopped and evaluated that?
Right.
Really clearly. A lot of times we don't. And like you said, when we get to a season of change, then we're faced really quickly with
You're
having
forced to do it almost.
Forced to do it. And so I spend a lot of time with my clients on who do they want to be. I do that because when you base your goals or your projects out of who you are going to be versus what you want to do, it's different.
Right.
You can give Jesus a little bit of time to work in you.
Right.
It'll also make it more powerful because when you've got that tied back to who you want to be, it just gives you a different sense of motivation. It gives you a different sense of your why.
Yeah.
And that is what's, on the hard days when you don't want to do that thing that you say you want to do.
Right.
Some days we want to do it, some days we don't.
Yeah.
But that being like, no, I'm going to be who I said I'm going to be today. And so that means I'm going to do X, Y, or Z.
Right.
And so the other thing that can be hard is when we start growing or changing, we want to change everything at once. Like,
correct.
We start, oh my gosh, I got to change this thing and this part of my life and this thing and this thing. Well, for my coaching platform, we pick some areas of focus.
Right.
And if you're in a season of life that you can pick 5 or 6, that's great. But most of the time, people are like, I can pick 2 or 3 things that I can really dig deep on.
Yes.
And so that's great. We're going to go deep on those 3 things for the next 90 days.
Right.
And it's going to be, again, based out of who you want to be and your being. But I would love to be able to just set aside the daily and just focus on growth. Nobody's in that spot. We all have to grow in the daily.
Yeah.
And so taking in, what does your daily life look like? Okay, what are the 2 or the 3 things that you really want to grow in and focus on right now?
Just funny because in the 12 steps, step 10 is your daily inventory.
Yeah.
Like you do a daily inventory. Yeah. And that one is really looking at, how did I act today? How did I behave today? How did I respond today? And then when you evaluate that, you ask yourself why. Like, why did this impact me? Why was I angry? Why was I negative? And focusing on all of that part of the stuff. And when you first come to the steps, you start with one thing. For myself personally, it's 3 things, but it's all lumped in as an addiction. But I was an alcoholic who did drugs and had daddy issues. So I looked for validation in men. But just focusing on that one thing, that was a symptom of the problem. The problem was all of the stuff that lived inside of me. And then God beautifully revealed to me that, Rae Anne, you are codependent, enabling, people-pleasing, and you're neurotic. And I was like, all right. But I couldn't focus on those things about myself until this one big, huge, glaring problem. But I used alcohol. I used drugs. I used validation from attention from men to ignore that stuff about myself. And all of that was rooted in things that I had to look at and to find out. You know, the alcohol, I used it to escape. A huge control freak because life was never safe. So I would drink to black out on purpose. I can't change my life or fix my life. I felt powerless. I felt helpless. So let me just drink so I can ignore it and not care. Now, drugs, on the other hand, I did that because of the people pleaser. I wanted to join in with people around me, but that's why I also have sympathy for people that I know what it's like to be addicted to something you hate and you don't know how to stop. I absolutely hated meth. I hated doing meth. The only thing I loved about it was it made me skinny and I didn't have to work at it. Other than that, I hated everything about it. The validation from men, God reveals to me when I'm going through the 12 steps, was because I have daddy issues. My father, left before I was even born. I've never met him. I never saw him. I have a stepdad that came into the picture when I was 7. We had a tumultuous relationship. It was terrible. We have a great one today, but it didn't start out that way. I did have a grandfather that chose me and loved me like nobody else has ever loved me in this world. But he still wasn't my biological dad, and I didn't know or understand that even that perfect love from him wasn't healing these wounds that I had missing from my father, which I didn't even know they existed or I had them until I got into the 12 steps. I mean, I looked at it as like, his loss, if my dad didn't want to know me, big deal, but I didn't realize that it actually still affected me until I got into the 12 steps and, I started looking at that stuff. And now to even look back though or think about some of the things that I used my body for or that I did with my body to get attention from men that I didn't even know, I can't wrap my brain around that. Today would not make any sense to me, but there was unhealed parts of me that I thought that was the solution, and it wasn't.
And as you're talking about that, I found it so beautiful and painful too, I'm sure at the time, that God showed you those 4 things, I'm not going to be able to say them all,
That's
but
okay.
the 4 things that he revealed to you.
Even I still struggle. I'm like, what are all my problems still?
Well, but that's the thing. He revealed them to you not to define you.
Correct.
But so you could face them.
Right.
And he helped you face them and walk out of them. Because,
correct.
Obviously you still have struggles, but I don't see you as any of those things.
No, thank you.
Today.
Thanks.
And so, it can be painful to look at where we are sometimes.
Sure. And that's why most people will avoid it, is because they're afraid of the pain.
Yes.
But there's so much beauty in that. And I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. But a lot of times people don't want to face that. They feel like it is too overwhelming. Well, that's the beauty of the process.
Yes.
And someone's sitting there with you. You're not alone. We can face this. It's one little thing at a time. There is a process for a reason. And the process is in order for a reason. And it makes sense. And then it's not as overwhelming. And I tell people, nothing's going to hurt more than it did the first time. You've already experienced the most pain from this that you're ever going to experience. Now let's sit down with that pain and stop letting it control your life, dictating your life, and destroying you. Let's take ownership and power over that pain, and let's turn it into something beautiful or productive, because then that's also where Christ comes in. He uses all of that stuff for his good and his glory in your life. But what you've experienced and all the things that you've been through, when you start using that pain to help other people and go through things with other people, it gives that pain purpose, and it no longer has any authority over you.
Right. Yeah, if you don't ever acknowledge it or define it or notice it, then it's going to stay with you.
Right.
But it's in the defining, the noticing that you can let it go.
Right.
And you can move on from it.
Yeah. There's times too, and I've had to catch myself, and I'll be sitting across from someone and they're just wrecked, like absolutely wrecked. Like they're crying. They're just, I mean, they're on the verge of just maybe even wanting to give up. And I find that I'll crack a smile, and I'll have to apologize and be like, I'm not smiling because this is funny.
Yeah.
Like, I'm smiling because I'm so excited. I have goosebumps thinking about it. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah.
You're at a place now where you're so at your end of yourself that all you have left is Christ. And I know what that's like because I've been there, and I know what's going to happen for you now.
Right.
I know what's going to go, what could take root and happen in your life if you will let Christ come in and do it. And I get so excited for people that I just want to be like, yahoo! I want to party because I'm so excited for them.
I love that. And I'm sure it may be a little jarring for them in that moment, but also give them a little bit of hope. Because I'm sure, that's a painful moment.
Yeah.
And so being able to be like, oh, wow, this is just the beginning. It's not where I'm going to stay.
Right.
Is helpful too.
And I think the beauty of all of it is too, because when I went to my very first NA meeting, I went because my husband was court ordered, and my codependency and my controlling, I had to go learn his program so that I could make sure that he stayed sober, because if he can stay sober, I'm a good girl and my life will be fine.
Yeah.
And it's probably about the third meeting that I'm just thinking, I don't understand why all these people are talking about me. I started thinking, oh crap, well maybe I do have some of my own problems. Maybe I do have some of my own issues, because I tend to blame everybody else. Circumstances, people, whatever. I blamed all of this stuff. I didn't take ownership for how I chose to respond or how I moved or the decisions that I made. And so then I'm sitting there thinking, well crap, maybe I do have my own problems, and there are things of myself that I have to work on or that I have to change. And then that's when God was like, yeah, you've got some big problems that we need to work on, you know. But it was really just to go so I could fix my husband, because if he was all right, then I'd be all right.
That might have been your reason, but Jesus had other reasons.
Right. Because then a lot of times I think what I really found out, and my husband loves to say this one, you're not as important as you think you are. And I look at it as like, I'm not as unique in my pain or my struggles as I think I am.
Yeah.
You start hearing all these stories and you hear people talk and you're like, oh my gosh, I thought it was just me. Oh, I thought only I felt this way. Only I struggled with this. Only I experienced this. Only whatever. And when you realize you're not as unique as you think you are, it also helps you, because then you're not alone. You're not alone in this. Yeah.
Well, let's wrap up for today.
Okay.
So I hope people keep listening, because we're going to start in 12 steps. Start looking for us to launch podcasts or drop podcasts on Monday evenings.
Yeah.
And I just want to wrap up with a prayer.
Yes.
And that may be weird to some of you folks out there, but if you are somebody that prays, pray along with us. If you're somebody that's never prayed, I want to give you a prayer that I used when I was first really getting close to Jesus back in my 20s. Nice. And all I could pray was, Jesus, show me you're here, and show me that you love me.
Beautiful.
So if you never prayed, maybe just take that prayer for a minute and just take it. But I'm going to pray over our podcast and over the people that might be listening.
Thank you. Dear
Jesus, thank you so much for this opportunity to share what you're doing in the life of Rae Anne and the life of Nikki, but also just bless the people that might hear this. Just help them to take away whatever you have for them out of our discussions, and help them to know you, first of all, and help them to strive to be who you want them to be, and to strive to live the wonderful life that you have for them. And we just ask that the ears that need to hear us will hear us, and that even above our voices, they'll hear you, Jesus.
Amen.
We love you. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so we want to say thank you to Spray Can oh my goodness. We want to say thank you to Spray Can Creative for letting us use this wonderful space. They sponsor us through the use of this podcast space. You can find more about the Sunflower Rising podcast on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok.
So many places.
And the website coming out as well. And you can find more about my coaching at nikkisnyder.com. Awesome. So thanks, and we hope you tune in next time.
And remember, always face the sunlight.